My name is Elizabeth, and I want to share my story. Our family used to be just like any other, my mom, my dad, and me in our cozy home. My dad worked hard, doing whatever he could to make sure we had what we needed, even though we weren't rich. I was 13 years old when everything changed forever. It was a regular morning when my dad left for work, kissed my mom, ruffled my hair, and said, "See you tonight, kiddo." Those were the last words I ever heard from him. That afternoon, 2 police officers came to our door with the news that my dad had died in an accident at his job. I couldn't understand it. My whole world collapsed in that moment. The next few months were some of the hardest of my life. My mom barely left her bed, and I found myself trying to take care of things around the house, doing chores and looking after her. Even though I was just a kid, our neighbors tried to help, bringing food and offering sympathy, but nothing could fill the huge hole my dad left behind. A year later, my mom met Jack through a grief support group. Jack was a divorced dad with a son, Matthew. At first, he seemed nice enough. He'd bring me treats and talk to me about school, even trying to make my mom smile again. It made me feel like maybe things could get better. One night, my mom sat me down and asked, "How would you feel if Jack and Matthew moved in with us?" I was taken aback, unsure of what to say, but seeing the hope in her eyes, I agreed. They got married quietly at the courthouse, and suddenly, our family grew by 2. At first, things seemed okay. Jack was kind, and Matthew kept to himself, but after a while, little things started to change. When I needed my mom for school events, Jack would make comments that made me feel like I was asking for too much. He'd complain about the costs when I needed new clothes. Then came the trips to my grandmother's house. What started as a few sleepovers turned into weeks at a time. It seemed easier to keep extra clothes at grandma's, so I wouldn't have to keep packing. The real turning point came when my mom told me she was pregnant. I was 14, and while my mom was glowing with joy, I felt a knot in my stomach. Jack was thrilled, and it seemed like they were building their dream family, with me becoming less and less a part of it. One night, I overheard Jack talking to my mom. He said, "We need to be realistic, Gianna. The house is too small, especially with the baby. Elizabeth is practically living at your mom's. Maybe it's time to make that permanent." The hurt hit me like a punch. I already felt like I was being pushed out, but hearing my mom agree without a second thought broke me. It became clear, my own family didn't want me anymore. They were more focused on their new life together. I ran to my room, heartbroken, and cried for hours. The next morning, I told Grandma everything, her face set with determination, and she said, "If they want to do this, we'll make it right. You're not some unwanted thing they can just get rid of." That same day, Grandma called my mom. I could hear her voice from the kitchen, steady and strong. "Gianna, if Elizabeth is going to stay with me, we need to make it official. I want to adopt her. She deserves stability, not to feel abandoned. I'll raise her, make sure she gets a good education, and care for her, but you'll need to give up your rights as her parent." Mom didn't argue. She signed the papers, and soon enough, Grandma became my legal guardian. I moved in with her, but it didn't feel like much had changed. Grandma had already been more of a mother to me than my own mom had in years. The visits to my mom's house became awkward. Jack barely acknowledged me, Matthew stayed out of the way, and my mom always seemed distant. One day, I brought photos from a school play I was proud of. Mom barely looked at them before saying, "That's nice, honey, but it's getting late. Jack's parents are coming over for dinner." That was the last time I visited. I stopped trying to connect because it was clear she didn't care. As time passed, Mom's absence became my new normal. I didn't think about her much anymore. I focused on my life, on growing up and doing things that mattered to me. When graduation day came, I didn't expect her to show up. I knew she wouldn't, but Grandma was there, cheering me on and taking photos, proud as can be. When it came time for college, Grandma made sure I didn't worry about money. "I've been saving for your education since you were little," she told me. I felt lucky to have her support, even though my relationship with my mom was long gone. College was a fresh start. I didn't have to think about my broken family. I threw myself into my studies and made new friends. By the time I graduated, I was a different person. Grandma was there again, her eyes brimming with tears as I walked across the stage. Afterward, I moved back in with her. It was home. Then one evening, Grandma told me something that made my heart sink. "Jack and your mom moved to Wyoming. They sold the house." I didn't know what to feel. They were across the country now, and I hadn't heard a word from them. As painful as it was, I didn't reach out. What was the point? They had moved on, and I had too. But later that night, I found myself scrolling through my mom's Facebook. I saw pictures of her new life, her growing family, and all the things I had missed. It hurt more than I expected. Grandma started to get sick soon after. It started with a cough, then a fever. Before long, she could barely get out of bed. I stayed by her side, helping with everything I could. One morning, I found her collapsed on the bathroom floor. I called an ambulance, but it was clear things weren't looking good. I reached out to my mom, hoping she would care enough to come. I sent her a message telling her that Grandma was seriously ill. Her response was cold and heartless. "I don't have time for this right now. You should be taking care of her. She's your mother now." I couldn't believe what I was reading. How could she be so cold? Grandma was her mother too. I felt so angry and hurt, but I didn't know what to say back. My mom's indifference cut deeper than anything she had ever done before. Grandma's condition worsened, and I became her full-time caregiver. The days blurred into a routine of medications and doctor visits, and through it all, my mom remained absent. When Grandma passed away, I knew I had to tell my mom. I sent her a message, hoping she'd at least come to the funeral, but the response I got was worse than I could have imagined. She said she didn't care, that I should stop bothering her with my problems, and that she wouldn't pay for the funeral. Her words were cruel, and the final blow came when she said, "I'll show up for the inheritance, though." I couldn't believe it. My own mother, the person I once trusted and loved, was so cold and distant, but I didn't have time to dwell on it. I had to bury Grandma and say goodbye, but deep down, I knew that I had always been loved by the one person who mattered, Grandma, and that's what got me through everything. I collapsed into Grandma's favorite armchair, the weight of everything crashing down on me. My hands shook, not just from the anger I felt, but from the heartbreak that had settled deep inside me. The woman who was once my mother, who should have been grieving her own mother, had shown nothing but selfishness. She cared more about a wedding dress and an inheritance than the passing of the person who had raised me. I sat there for what felt like forever, trying to process the deep hurt and the crushing realization that I was truly alone in this. But eventually, the anger turned into something else. It wasn't rage that I was left with, it was resolve. I couldn't count on her anymore. If this was how she wanted things, then I would handle it all on my own. And so I did. The days that followed were a blur of phone calls, meetings, and painful decisions. I met with the funeral director to make arrangements, picking out a simple but elegant casket for Grandma. It was exactly what she would have wanted. I arranged for white lilies to be at the service, her favorite flowers. I called her friends from church, the women from her bridge club, even former colleagues from her teaching days, so they could be there to honor her. I wrote the obituary myself, each word more painful than the last, but honest. "Beloved mother and grandmother," I began, and every word I typed felt like a tribute to the woman who had been my true mother, far more than my biological one ever had been. A week after the funeral, I mustered the courage to go through Grandma's papers. Her desk, neat and orderly as always, was full of carefully organized documents. There were birth certificates, tax returns, insurance policies, everything was filed away with precision. Then I found an envelope labeled "Last Will and Testament, Copy." My hands trembled as I opened it, revealing a document typed with care, signed by Grandma herself. I sat down and read it, then read it again, letting the words sink in. The will was straightforward, reflecting Grandma's directness. She had left me, her legally adopted daughter, her house and all of her savings, a total of $300,000. But then I saw the part that stopped my heart. To my biological mother, Gianna Edwards, she left $22,000 and her family Bible, with a message that made me gasp. It is my sincere hope that she will read it and finally learn the true meaning of patience, compassion, and love for one's neighbor. I didn't know what to do with the overwhelming mix of emotions that hit me. On impulse, I took a photo of the will and sent it to my mother. I didn't add a message, I just sent the picture, letting her see the consequences of her actions. The response came instantly. My phone buzzed nonstop with texts and calls from her. I didn't read any of them, and I let every call go to voicemail, feeling strangely satisfied by the silence. The next morning, as I was making coffee, I heard car doors slam outside. When I looked out the window, I saw my mom and Jack walking up the path. I took a slow sip of my coffee and waited for the inevitable pounding on the door. "Open this door right now, Elizabeth." My mother's voice was shrill, almost frantic. I walked slowly to the door and opened it just enough for her to see my face. "This is ridiculous," she said, waving her phone with the photo of the will. This has to be fake. There's no way Mom would do this to me. I'm her real daughter. I leaned against the doorframe, not even a little surprised. I'm surprised you came all the way here. Don't you have more important things to do, like planning a wedding, or picking out a dress for the mother of the groom? Her face turned from red to purple with anger. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Mocking us like this. This is obviously a fake. Jack stepped in, trying to take charge. We need to see the official will from a notary, not some paper you could have typed up yourself. I smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. Funny you should mention that. The official reading of the will is tomorrow morning at 11 a.m., at the notary's office. Fine, my mom snapped. We'll stay here tonight. No, you won't, I said firmly, stepping aside and pointing toward the door. This is my house now, and you're not welcome to stay here. There's a Holiday Inn down the road. I'm sure they have reasonable rates. You can't throw us out. Mom's voice was high with disbelief. No, I can't throw you out of your mother's house, I replied, but I can throw you out of my house, which is exactly what I'm doing right now. I closed the door in their shocked faces, leaned against it, and took a deep breath. I was surprised by how clear-headed I felt. Tomorrow would be an eventful day. The notary's office was small but professional, with dark wood paneling and framed certificates lining the walls. Mr. Charles, the notary, sat behind his desk, exuding an air of authority. My mom and Jack arrived late, their disheveled appearance betraying their restless night at the hotel. After everyone took a seat, Mr. Charles adjusted his glasses and began the official proceedings. I stayed quiet, watching my mother shift uncomfortably in her seat as Mr. Charles worked his way through the legal jargon, but as soon as he got to the part about the inheritance, my mom's face went from nervous to furious. This is ridiculous, she shouted before Mr. Charles could finish. This is a fake. She manipulated everything. Mrs. Edwards, Mr. Charles said, his voice calm but firm, I assure you, the will is authentic. I was present when it was signed and witnessed its drafting. You're in on it too. Mom's voice climbed higher, accusing everyone in the room. Please, Mrs. Edwards, lower your voice, Mr. Charles warned. If you can't calm down, I'll have to ask you to leave. Reluctantly, my mom sat down, her face flushed with anger. The room was silent for a moment, until she whispered to me, I'll contest this with everything I've got. That house is mine. Those savings are mine. I'm her real daughter. Mr. Charles sighed, cleaned his glasses, and then said, while you're free to contest the will in court, I must inform you that it would be a waste of time. What are you talking about? Jack asked, his voice defensive. The will is legally binding, Mr. Charles explained. It was properly drafted and notarized. Your mother was in full possession of her faculties when she made these decisions. We also have documentation showing that Elizabeth has been the primary caregiver for years. That doesn't matter, Mom spat. Blood is what matters. Actually, Mrs. Edwards, Mr. Charles corrected, that's not true. What matters is your mother's wishes. She chose to leave everything to Elizabeth, who was not only legally adopted but was also the one who cared for her in her final years. I spoke up, not able to keep quiet anymore. I also have our Facebook messages, Mom, the ones where you refused to visit Grandma in the hospital, called her that old woman, and ignored her needs for medical bills. Would you like me to share those? Her face went from pale to red, and I could tell she was trying to hide the guilt. You wouldn't dare. Try me, I said softly. I had kept every message, every rejection, every time she had put her new family ahead of the woman who had raised me. Months passed, and I never heard from her about the lawsuit. The silence was deafening. My mom's social media posts began to dry up, but then one day, I woke up to find a flood of notifications. She had posted a long, emotional message, claiming I had stolen her inheritance and betrayed her. She depicted herself as the victim, the poor woman who had been wronged by her own daughter. The backlash was swift. My aunt, Dad's sister, chimed in, have you forgotten how you abandoned your daughter? My cousin Jack pointed out, you chose your new family over Elizabeth. You legally gave up your rights as a mother. The post was quickly deleted, but the message from our extended family was clear, they didn't support her. Not long after, my mom started calling again, asking for money for her son Samuel's college tuition. She was asking for help with his tuition, trying to guilt me into helping her. Elizabeth, she said sweetly, Samuel needs your help with his tuition, he's your brother. I ignored the messages, but she kept trying, even asking for a small loan. Eventually, I picked up the phone. Family? I interrupted. You stopped being my family when I was 15. You didn't care about me then. And you don't care now. Don't call me again. I hung up and blocked her number, feeling like I had closed the door on a long and painful chapter of my life. 8 months later, I sat in my own home, looking out the window at the sunset. The house was small, but it felt like a place of peace. It had only needed modest renovations, things Grandma had already planned before she passed. I had most of the $300,000 still in a high-yield savings account, and I was financially stable with a good job. I didn't need luxuries or extravagant vacations. Grandma had taught me that money buys security, not happiness, and with the security she gave me, I was able to build a life that made her proud. I no longer thought of the woman who gave birth to